Welcome back to Old School Sports and our Out of the Park Baseball 24 playthrough of the Buffalo Wings. We are at the start of the International Amateur Free Agent signing period. Appreciate those of you who have shared your thoughts on how we should proceed during this signing period. Notably, got some interesting thoughts from both Dralix and Not My Four Ply that have definitely influenced the way that I am going to proceed. Not proceeding exactly how those two suggested, but in the case of Dralix, I think I am going to offer a little less for a couple players than I would have otherwise. And in the case of Not My Four Ply, definitely going to go for one of the two players that that viewer really liked. So, taking a look at the international amateur free agents, in the early stages of this playthrough, we were picking up 2, 3, sometimes even more than that, international amateur free agents. In the last few years, we've just gone with one high end international amateur free agent. I am going to try to do something a little different this year. I like Arturo Resendiz. We've got a strong relationship with him. The league interest is very low. I would have been inclined to offer him like 150,000 to just get the deal done. But given his low greed and suggestion from Dralix, gonna try to come in a little bit lower than that. I don't know whether he'll even go for this at 70,000. Looks like he wants 110. Maybe if we pop it up to 80, and he's willing to think about 80,000. So he would be a pretty good, solid player, not a good, solid prospect. Who knows how he's going to turn out as a player, but he's a 3-star prospect, not looking for a ton of money. And then for the time being, we're going to pivot to two pitchers. One of them is a guy who I think is going to be a reliever, but I think he's going to be a potentially really interesting reliever. 16 years old, throwing in the mid-90s, has a good work ethic. His fastball and his splitter already aren't all that far off major league average, according to our scout. I don't think that changeup is going to develop, so he's never going to be a starter. But he's also not looking for a crazy amount of money. So we are going to go ahead and offer him a contract as well. See if 650,000 will get it done, and he's at least willing to think about that. And with those two less expensive prospects, us at least having offers out to, came down to 3 players to spend a little more money on potentially. One is the second baseman Jorge Garza. Like his durability, like his potential bat. Clearly, he's got a massive amount of growth that needs to take place, and he's 17 years old. So he's a little older than the 2 starting pitching prospects that I really like. Eddie Izaguirre, little greedy, so he may be looking for a little more, but I like his durability, like his 3-pitch arsenal, his movement's potentially off the charts. Almost 17 years old, throwing in the low to mid 90s. Definitely a pretty interesting prospect. But I also like Alvaro Romero. Durable, good work ethic, a little bit younger by a couple of months, throwing in the low to mid 90s as well. If his curveball develops, he should have plenty of stuff to be effective at the major league level, and there's a chance that his movement and control are also above average. We've got very high scouting accuracy on Romero, and I also like the fact that he's a little less greedy than Izaguirre is, even though he's also allegedly looking for about 500,000 more. So we're also going to get an offer out to the Grim Reaper Romero. With a nickname like that, you've got to make a play for the guy. So we'll put 1.75 out to him. He's willing to think about that. So that gets us 3 offers out here in the very early stages of international amateur free agency. Still got almost 2.3 million left to spend, but I'm guessing that some or perhaps all of those players will end up coming back and looking for more money. So at this point, we're just going to put those 3 offers out there and see what happens, depending on how things transpire. In a perfect scenario, I'd love to get all 3 of those players signed and potentially even have a little bit of money left to deal away. But we will see how this international amateur free agent signing period goes. Generally, the price seems to climb on just about everybody, but getting a few offers out there, we'll see what happens. Other than that, I think it's going to be relatively quiet for the next few weeks. Preseason starts in about 2 weeks, about 6 weeks till spring training begins. At this point, probably the most interesting thing for us to monitor is Vance Honeycutt's return from that torn UCL. Still going to be out for about 3 months, so questionable what, if any, spring training he will have this year. The only thing that obviously would prefer to have him back for the beginning of the regular season, but if he ends up being delayed, I did notice that since last season's Rule 5 acquisition, Rafael Radillo did spend some time on the 60-day IL and then on a minor league rehab assignment. We've still got to keep him up for 15 more active days to eliminate his Rule 5 status. So if Honeycutt is delayed, that gives us even more of an excuse to keep Radillo on the Major League roster for a couple of weeks before potentially sending him down to AAA where he can play every day. And Arturo Resendiz and Luis Miranda both say that they like our offers. Have not heard from the other prospect that we made an offer to yet. And now we have, and Alvaro Romero says he's looking for more money, not surprisingly. He was the bigger ticket item of the 3 guys that we made offers to, so not a shock to me that coming in, I think about $450,000 below what he was demanding, does not work for Mr. Romero. We'll definitely reach back out to him and see what he's looking for. $2.8 million. We'll offer him $2.95. We're going to go high and see if maybe we can just get him locked up immediately, given that he is the biggest ticket item that we are bidding on right now. And Romero claims to like our offer. We'll check in on... As you can see, we've offered minor league contracts to a bunch of people as we're trying to build out our farm system for the next year. But latest we know is that Resendiz, Romero, and Miranda all supposedly favor our offers, but we are still in the very early stages of this signing period. And the center fielder, Arturo Resendiz, who we thought was going to be a bargain basement guy, is looking for more money. But good news, we do have Luis Miranda signed. So again, this is a guy who I think is going to be a reliever, but he was asking for $850,000, and we offered him $650,000, so we signed him for a bit less than we thought he was worth. Kind of a weird move for me to be going after someone who I expect to be a reliever, but I like the high work ethic. And if that fastball and splitter, I mean, they don't even have to develop that much. If that fastball and splitter, get halfway to where we think they can, he could be a decent major league pitcher, assuming that his movement and control also come along. But like trying to go with a little perhaps more volume over top end potential in our international amateur free agents this year, although with 4-star potential. Miranda has as high potential, according to our scout, as any pitcher who was available. Resendiz, feel at least we're coming from a little bit of a position of strength now that we've signed somebody. Offer him a contract, says he's looking for 110. We'll give him exactly what he's offering for, or exactly what he's requesting at this point. Don't know whether we'll get him signed or not, but that's still less than the 130 that he was initially asking for. And supposedly he likes the offer. So I think that obviously good to have one guy signed. And as far as we know, both Resendiz and Romero favor our offers at this point. And Alvaro Romero looking for more money now, supposedly close to $3.3 million. We can afford that amount, but I'm going to at least see what some other guys are looking for before getting into a total bidding war on him, since there were 3 guys that I liked, and don't feel like we have to chase him to a crazy amount. Eddie Izaguirre, another pitcher that we liked, looking for $2.7 million at this point, so only a bit less than what Romero is looking for. And then taking a look at the batters, Jorge Garza, the second baseman that we liked, is still out there, and he says he's only looking for $1.4 million. I kind of like him. Doesn't seem like there's a ton of demand for him, though, so I may make one final play for Romero. Oh, although he says he wants $4.4 million now, which we can't do. All right, well, that makes our decision much easier. We're going to pivot to the second baseman. It seems like the demand for him is not as crazy, so we're going to offer him $1.25 million and just see if we can get him locked up. Let's see what happens. And we got some good news and some bad news. The good news is center fielder Arturo Resendiz signed with us. So we've got the 2 somewhat lesser prospects that we were interested in. Got him at 110. His original number was 130. So I think some of the strategies that Dralix shared definitely paid off. We've lost out on Romero at this point. We knew we weren't going to have enough for him. He ended up going for the full $4.75 million, the max presumably that the Angels had to offer. But we've got 2 guys signed. The question is whether we can add a third guy that we like with them. And Garza was kind of viewed in not my 4-plies eyes as a potential fallback. He preferred both of the pitchers. We'll see what happens with Garza. If we're able to get him signed, it might be time to stand down and see if we can trade away some of our money to others. But right now the goal is to get him signed and at least get our international amateur free agent class up to 3 players this season. And Garza has signed with us as well. So we've got 3 guys signed for less than their initial asking prices were. And with Garza, I feel like we've got a pretty high-end prospect if he fully develops. Now, certainly the odds are against anyone that you pick up in the international amateur free agent signing period developing as well as you hope that they would. But we've, I think, put ourselves into a pretty interesting position this year at this point, because we've spent only $2 million. We still have $2.7 million left. And we bought three guys that we really like on board at this point. center fielder, a relief pitcher, and a second baseman. Among the top prospects, Eddie Izaguirre is still out there. I'm guessing 2.74 million. I can't remember where he was. I think he was above that. And Luis Espinoza is a prospect we didn't like quite as much. But if we're going for volume this year, I worry a little bit about his stuff, but he still is a 16-year-old, throws in the low to mid-90s already, starting pitching prospect, looking for 1.5 million, which we could afford, but just checking in on the batters who are available. Domingo Aguilar, kind of didn't like him as much as Resendiz, the other center fielder. So I think I am going to pivot here and try to bring on a slightly less impressive starting pitching prospect, we believe, than Izaguirre or Romero, but still a guy who, if everything works out, could certainly be a contributor. Says he's looking for 1.54. We'll offer him 1.55 and just try to get him locked up as soon as possible. And not surprisingly, the bidding on Espinoza apparently getting a little more intense. Looking for 2.6 million, which is kind of we only got 140,000 more than that. I'm going to offer him 2.65, which would leave us with 90,000. I don't know if we have 90,000 left, how much teams are going to be interested in trading for that amount. But I guess if they're in a bidding war, maybe it'll be worth something to them. And it looks like, unfortunately, Espinoza is going to be looking for more money than we can possibly offer him. But that's okay. I like the 3 guys we've signed. They're 3 of the 10 guys that we had in camp with us. If we end up spending a little less money on international amateur free agency than potentially anticipated, it'll free up some money in our budget to do some other things. But right now, we've got 2.74 million left. I'm going to just scout the players that are out there, see if there's anyone worth taking a flyer on. And then I'm also going to start seeing if there's any prospects we might be able to pick up by sending some of our budget to teams that are in desperate bidding wars. And we did end up pivoting and trying to make an international amateur free agent offer to another starting pitcher, Andres Delgado. I really liked the personality, and he had a not intimidating in terms of the quality of his pitches, but just a lot of pitches that he could potentially work on. Was a left-hander, but he's looking for more money than we can pay right now. We do also have a $700,000 offer to a center fielder, Jorge Climaco, another guy we really like. His personality, has some speed, decent outfield range. A little worried that he's got the Deshaun Seifu profile, but his contact and his gap power are not the same crazy levels that Deshaun Seifu's are, and his eye is also potentially not as good. But like the durability, if the glove gets a little better and he retains the speed, could, in a perfect world, be a useful 4th or 5th outfielder off the bench perhaps. Probably not going to be a perfect world, but figured he was worth making an offer for. No one else that we're really that interested in, so now I am going to start trolling a little bit for some prospects and see if there's some teams that are in bidding wars who are looking for a little bit of international free agent cash. And we did reach out to the Yankees for the minor league pitcher that they had offered us a month or so ago. We offered him $500,000 of international amateur pool money, but they were also looking for a pretty good player or a pretty good prospect in return. Kato is the guy that they were going to go straight up for Guerrero before. And Climaco is now looking for a little bit more money from us, which we potentially have to pay. 1.4 million. We'll meet his demand and submit that offer. Still gives us an opportunity to potentially trade some excess money away to some of these teams that are getting in bidding wars for other players. And we ended up not being able to trade any of our international amateur free agent money away. We were struggling. You'll see there's a lot of no ways on deals that we offered to people over the past several days and weeks at this point. But we did end up signing Jorge Climaco. He ended up being our most expensive signing, but I do like his personality, and that gives us a fourth player on board. Doesn't leave us with much money at all. I believe it leaves us with only $100,000, $140,000. So he was the most expensive guy that we picked up, but we did sign 4 guys, including 3 of the 10 that we had in camp. All in all, I'm pretty satisfied with what we did. Going to end up spending a little bit less than we budgeted for, so we can knock the budget down to 4610, open up a little bit more money, and now it's just a matter of continuing to peruse the free agent market a bit to see if here in mid-February, if anyone's getting desperate to sign. I mean, we've still got 2 weeks till spring training starts and still have about 6 weeks, 7 weeks till opening day. Taking a look at our buddy Vance Honeycutt, and he's still 2 months away, so he's likely going to need some rehab time. So I do tend to think that we'll probably end up having a Mason Neville or a Rafael Rodillo, someone who we've got some Rule 5 needs with to fill his spot for some period of time. Obviously, Neville's going to need to be with us the whole year if we keep him, since we just picked him up in the Rule 5 draft about a month ago. But Rodillo, the timing there could work out interesting. Keep him up for 15 days, so his rights are ours, and we can send him down into the minors, and that could be about the time that Honeycutt is ready with finishing up a rehab assignment, hopefully healthy and ready to contribute. And we've made it to the start of spring training, so about 5 weeks till the start of the regular season. Only have 42 players in camp, everyone on our 40-man roster, everyone on our depleted Capitals roster, and then a couple of guys from the lower parts of the organization. We're obviously got a ton of work to do to figure out what our minor league teams are going to look like when all is said and done. Got tons of guys that we've signed recently who are still assigned to our lowest level teams. Presumably some of them, many of them will be moving up across the organization. But right now the goal is to keep people healthy, taking a look at our pitching staff, the usual 5 starters from last year, and then with our 6th starter in spring training, going to give the youngster Jorge Carrillo an opportunity. He's been a popular trade target from other teams this offseason. Did pretty well with a 2.76 ERA and a strikeout per inning in 17 games, making his major league debut last year. I think at the very least he will be in our bullpen. If he pitches great in the spring, could he supplant Sullivan as our number 5 starter? I think it's possible. And as we did start getting ready for spring training, we re-scouted everyone on our team. A couple things a little disappointing. Deshaun Seifu, at least according to our last scouting report, has definitely regressed defensively. So that's not great. And interestingly and unfortunately, Dansby Swanson, we think, has also regressed pretty significantly defensively from when we picked him up. You'll remember we're only paying 40% of his contract, so we've got him for about $8 million this year as our replacement for Marcelo Meyer. But very interesting to see that he seems to have regressed pretty significantly. Thought it could be coming at age 37, but didn't think it would be that dramatic and that quick. So perhaps our middle infield defense is not going to be as strong as we had hoped. Does make me feel a little better having kept Kato around when we could have traded him away because his defense may be even more important for us than we had anticipated when all is said and done. We'll also just check in with, as I said, about 5 weeks till the start of the season, and Vance Honeycutt looks like he's going to be out for about 7 weeks, so he will not be ready to go. Hopefully he'll look pretty good on the other side. We'll take a look and see what Marcelo Meyer looks like right now, too. He still may be recovering from his injury, is out. Yeah, 6 weeks left. Doesn't look like any impact on his ratings so far. But will be interesting to see what both Meyer and Honeycutt look on the other side of those significant injuries that they both suffered on that awful day of September 7th, 2030, when we lost two of our big-time players, and it really helped put us into a tailspin that ended with a playoff season, but the 83 wins we ended up with was not really what we were anticipating. And the first significant injury of the spring, Caleb Ferguson. You may remember we made a trade for him with the Dodgers. Strained oblique, going to be out 5 to 6 weeks. We're certainly expecting that he would be an important left-handed arm in our bullpen. Still can be, but he will not be with us for the beginning of the regular season, unfortunately. And we have made it through the end of spring training. Both Ferguson and Honeycutt have about 2 weeks left with their injuries, so no new injuries to report, although it looks like we have a diagnosis pending on Kato, so who knows what's going to happen there. But hopefully those guys will be back in the not too distant future, hopefully before the end of the month of April for both of them. But 3 days away from the start of the season on April 7th, and now our big project is going to be to turn this 41-man spring training roster into a 26-man roster that will head north to Buffalo for the 2031 season. Taking a look at the pitching staff first, pretty good performance by all 6 of the pitchers that we used as starters. We're not going to pull Harleen Susana out of the rotation despite a relatively high ERA. Jorge Carrillo was really good, 2-1 record, 2.77 ERA, but Sean Sullivan certainly didn't do anything to lose that number 5 spot. So I think we'll keep Sullivan in the 5-man rotation. That'll give us 1 lefty in the rotation. And certainly Carrillo is going to make the 26-man roster. Really interested in seeing what he can do for us out of the bullpen this year. And then probably will be the first guy who gets an opportunity if we have any injuries and or ineffectiveness among the 5 guys in our starting rotation, the same 5 pitchers who combined to start every game for us, except for the final game of the season last year. And we are getting ready to make the final cut to our pitching staff to cut it down to 13 pitchers. And it's going to come down to the 2 Rule 5 picks from a year ago, or from a couple months ago. Both David Aranya and Brandon Hughes pitched very well in the preseason. Aranya, the right-hander, 25 years old, would make the major league minimum if he makes our team. Has only been in the majors for 3 days in his career. Opposite end of the spectrum is the left-hander Brandon Hughes, a veteran making a little over $1 million. Picked him up in the Rule 5 draft from Colorado. I think you could certainly argue that Hughes is a little bit better of a pitcher right now, but Aranya is a 25-year-old, still has potential for his fastball to get a little better. Somebody who throws in the high 90s, could be a player who is a cheap and useful member of our pitching staff for the next few seasons. So we are going to send Brandon Hughes back to... Ooh. Why am I not allowed to get rid of him? Picked him in the Rule 5 draft. No, why can't we? Maybe we just have to waive and DFA him. Why can we not send him back to Colorado? Am I not clicking properly here? I'll have to figure this out. I don't know why I can't just send him back to Colorado, because he was a Rule 5 pick just a few months ago, and I no longer want him. Yeah, I don't really know what's going on here. We picked him in the Rule 5 draft from Colorado. Given that I do have commissioner mode, I went into the editor here though, and it doesn't have his former team as a Rule 5 former team. So there's probably some weird little nuance that I am missing. But I'm going to make sure that he goes back to Colorado, because we don't want to keep him given the amount of money that he's making, and we should have the right to do that because he was a Rule 5 pick of ours, and we just don't want him on the roster. All right, so I moved Miller back to Colorado. If any of you can see what I might have been missing, please let me know in the comments. I can't figure out what it was. As we talked about with Otani, Susana, Painter, Yinger, and Sullivan, same 5-man starting rotation as a year ago. Andres Munoz back as our closer, Bryce Miller and Emerson Talavera back as relievers. Zane Adams, left-hander that we picked up in trade, a new addition. David Aranya, the right-hander that we picked up in the Rule 5, a new addition. Franklin Heel, a right-hander we picked up in trade, a new addition. Jorge Carrillo, not a new addition, but a hopefully permanent member of the team now, up from the minors for good. And then Kyle Backus is going to be a lefty out of the pen for us. So 2 lefties out of the pen right now with Sean Sullivan. And then the hope would be that when the lefty Caleb Ferguson is ready and recovered from his injury in a couple of weeks and gets a few rehab games under his belt, then we'll have another roster decision to make. But until then, obviously I'm going to tweak these roles a bit. Right now we are just doing everything that our new bench coach recommends, but that is not necessarily correct. But I would say there are no major surprises with what the 13-man pitching staff for the Buffalo Wings is going to look like at the start of the 2031 season. And we had a couple of cuts to get down to 13 position players that might be a little surprising. Tanner Shillette is going to be in AAA. Hit 208 with 6 homers and 144 at-bats for us at the major league level last year. But the power-hitting catcher is going to get some time in AAA. And joining him there is Shaylin Polanco, the outfielder that we traded for with Miami in late November. Thought he could potentially be in the mix for us as a corner outfielder. but he is going to begin the year in AAA as well. So with those moves, I can show you who are the 13 players who are going to be on our 26-man roster as position players at the start of the season. Kato, as I mentioned, is injured, diagnosis pending, so this is definitely subject to change depending on whether he has a serious injury or not. And it's also going to be subject to change in a couple of weeks when hopefully Vance Honeycutt will be back. But Samuel Basallo back as our DH, Adley Rutschman back as our starting catcher, and Josh Springer, the 24-year-old, was a third-round draft pick in 2024, has steadily moved up through our system, hit 262, 25 doubles, 16 homers last year in AAA Albany. He's average defensively, but we're a little light on right-handed bats. He is a guy who could also play first or corner outfield for us, so we decided to let him make the team over Shillette, given that he's a little better defensively, and he hasn't proven that he can't hit at the major league level yet. Another right-handed bat, another former draft pick, second rounder in 2025, Vaughn Necker, makes the team for the time being. He can play first, third, and left. As I mentioned, another right-handed bat. He was up briefly at the end of last year, 281, 38 homers, and 110 ribbies in AAA last year. So not a lot left for Necker to prove at that level. Takao Oda back as our starting first baseman. Kyron Paris, who we made the trade for with the Yankees in November, is going to be our utility infielder, or one of our utility infielders, the only captain personality that we have on the team. Deshaun Seifu back at second. And you'll see that for the time being, we are moving Dansby Swanson to third. If he and Kato are... if Kato gets hurt, obviously Swanson will move to shortstop, but we're going to try to have the veteran learn how to play third base at the major league level. That's what our manager or our bench coach is recommending. We're going to give it a try. Again, if Kato's hurt, we're going to move Swanson back to shortstop. I don't think that Kato is our long-term answer at shortstop. I just don't think he's going to hit enough. But for the time being, he is going to be potentially our starter. And the reason why is that our manager is suggesting that Cam Collier, who we picked up to be our third baseman, to play right field for us for the time being. He certainly is a better defensive right fielder than anyone we have. And if Kato's healthy, that lets us upgrade defensively at shortstop while playing Dansby Swanson at third base. Once Vance Honeycutt is back and healthy, so hopefully before the end of the month, we will put him into a corner outfield role, and we will move Cam Collier back to third base and let Swanson take over as shortstop for Kato. But right now, this is an opportunity for us to potentially have the best defense possible out there. Other outfielders, Mason Neville and Rafael Rodillo, likely will be splitting time in left field. And John Featherston is going to be our starting center fielder again. But once Honeycutt is back, Collier will move to third base. Swanson will move back to shortstop. And Kato, assuming he is healthy, will move to more of a utility infielder role. But because I don't have a ton of confidence in Neville and Rodillo as everyday players, feel like the best combination of defense and offense that we can put together for these next couple weeks until Honeycutt is around is potentially Kato at short, Swanson at third, and Collier in right field. A little weird. It's what our bench coach recommends. It doesn't necessarily 100% mean that I'm going to even go with this when the season starts. We've got 3 days until the season actually is underway, so presumably we'll know about Kato's injury by then. And if he's out, obviously Swanson will move back to short, and Collier will likely move back to third, and that could mean that Polanco or possibly Gillette actually makes the 26-man roster as a potential corner outfielder for us. And with this proposed 26-man roster, we've got about $3.8 million available, so we should be able to be active if we need to add players around the trade deadline. Our scouting and development both boosted from a year ago, and our player expenses about $9 million less than they were a year ago. So it's been a very busy and very hectic off season for Buffalo. Looking forward to seeing what this team can do on the field. But do want to let all of you who are still watching know that won't be seeing a new video from me for several days now, probably not until Friday. Going to be out of town and unable to play the game and post videos, so this will be the last one for several days. So I have not disappeared off the face of the earth. I will be back with the start of the 2031 season in our next episode. It's just going to be a little bit of a delay until I get that one out there. So appreciate you for watching. Hopefully there's something else on YouTube you can find, or hopefully can go back and watch some episodes from some previous series or from some tutorials or episodes that you've missed in this series if you need your fix of old school sports over the next several days. Until we are back, thank you so much for watching, and hope you have a great day.